Greetings everyone, Uni speaking. So, apologies for the lack of uploads with the exception of occasional shorts. Been busy with IRL stuff along with trying to do commissions, my current projects, it's been a lot. But I still do want to keep up with uploading on this channel, especially for the sake of Halloween month. Roll the intro and let's get started. Vocaloid and Creepypasta have both been beloved by many internet nerds such as myself, especially from back during the late 2000s to early 2010s, and even still to this day. However, they both had a rather mixed relationship. And no, I'm not talking about songs done by different talented producers dedicated to different creepypastas. Trust me, we've talked about that before. But as far as stories based off the titular singing softwares, on one hand you have pretty good and or popular ones like the Alice Killings. Another, you have ones that fall under the, it's okay category, like Kagome Kagome, said creepypasta being specifically inspired by the song of the same name, of course. Then you have ones like The Disappointment of Hatsune Miku.
Miku, I can explain! I stammered. She screeched at me with an angry, high-pitched voice.
That story simply wasn't very good, especially looking back. It's funny considering the potential creepypasta and Vocaloid would have had if you look back at the horror content surrounding Vocaloid at the time, and even now. Now, it's understandable that the majority of these are old and were more than likely made by people who were moderate in the writing department, but even still, the stories were either incredibly cliche, unbelievable, or simply didn't know what to do with themselves and just weren't scary. That is, except for one creepypasta. While not an amazing story, one that I consider a personal favorite. That simply being called Noise. This creepypasta was posted on the Creepypasta Wiki and actually revolves around Oliver, as if that little shit isn't already the epitome of the creepy child of the Vocaloid world. I came across this story a little while back in, I want to say 2018, and not only was it underrated, but I actually ended up liking it. Now, before getting into why, let's of course get into the actual story. I was gonna take the time and perhaps read the story itself, but it's best that I give a basic rundown and save the storytelling parts for key highlights, such as the actual scary part and maybe stuff I find noteworthy. Okay, now let's get into the story. So we start off with our protagonist being named Gabby. She explains how she was stuck babysitting her younger brother David, and especially since it was a hot summer afternoon, she didn't have much to do. So naturally, in the meantime, while her brother was busy watching TV, she decided to spend her time online, browsing the interwebs, checking emails, etc. Eventually, she would end up finding some Vocaloid songs to listen to, one of which being sung by Oliver, who she considered to be her favorite. Looking into the description of the original video, she found an oh-so-legitimate website for free Vocaloids. Naturally, she found this rather suspicious, believing it could potentially be a virus or would lead to an adult website. However, she didn't have any money, and most likely was looking forward to being the next Steam pianist. So like any other idiotic creepypasta protagonist, she decides to click on the link anyway, while praying she wouldn't get jump scared with ads like, "Try not to come, you will last 30 seconds playing this corn on the cob game." After some time, a page does open up to the website like so, simply being named Vocaloid. It's also painfully obvious it's a piracy website, which is fine by her. Nothing insanely creepy and out of place will happen, right? She looks around the site a bit, seeing a few recognizable Vocaloids. One of them being Hatsune Miku, of course, but there's also ones like Miriam and Siu. Kinda sad Mew isn't on there as well, she is such an underrated queen. After finding the link to Oliver's box, she decided to download it. Now there's a few notable things about the website that can possibly be red flags. Like instead of saying Vocaloids, it just said voices. Or how the download took like a millisecond as opposed to most downloads taking like minutes, sometimes hours depending on what you're downloading. Gabby shrugs it off and is overall excited to use the software. She gets herself well adjusted with the software little by little, trying to get everything to work well with Oliver's vocals, which took her hours until she eventually fell asleep. Only to be awoken by the sound of her brother screaming that he had made dinner. This causes her to freak out thinking he's trying to set the kitchen on fire, so she rushes downstairs. To her relief, she only heated up some Hot Pockets. After they both sat down, Gabby mentions that he could have asked her to cook something if he was hungry, to which David replied saying that her door was locked, which catches her off guard as she didn't remember locking it. He also notes that she was in there for hours, which especially catches her off guard even more. After finished eating, Gabby asks David to head to sleep so she can continue working on her little project. And like typical younger sibling behavior, he rushes upstairs to see it without at least asking her what it was or her permission, much to her annoyance. By the time she gets to the room, she notices David's change in demeanor, looking rather upset, simply saying he didn't like what he was seeing or hearing in this case. Gabby just brushes it off as him being too judgmental. But the second she looks at his face and realizes there's tears in his eyes, she realizes something is actually the matter. She noticed that he had played part of the song but was still confused on why he was upset, until she actually plays the song. Instead of the notes and lyrics I had programmed, Oliver moaned and screamed. Horrible screeching and moaning, pain puncturing his cries, deep guttural wails melted and mixed with high, piercing screams. It wasn't just unsettling, it was inhuman. It went on for an eternity, never pausing, only varying in its grotesque pitch. After the quote-unquote song finished, David and Gabby were left understandably petrified. The both of them were even crying at this point, with David asking what in the hell they just listened to. Unfortunately, Gabby wasn't even sure. She swore it wasn't even intended to sound like that. Afterwards, their parents get home, and they both greet them and try to play it cool. Their mom does notice them looking rather distressed, but they just gave a half lie and said they were just slightly spooked by something. Afterwards, our protagonist tries posting on different forums about Vocaloid, if anyone has heard or at least dealt with a weird experience regarding it. And much to her dismay, when she tried to find a link to the website in the description of the video involving Oliver, only to realize it's just fucking gone. To make matters even more distressing, she couldn't even find it in her search history. Then the story comes to an end, with Gabby expressing, despite laughing the matter off, she'll never forget those horrible noises. And so, the story of Noise comes to an end. Now, I have many positive things to say about this creepypasta with only a few negatives. I'll start with the positives this time. Firstly, I love the lack of blood and gore used. Now, I don't mind horror stories and media including blood and gore here and there. Hell, I even included it in my art sometimes and even plan to do so for future works. But some horror media, creepypastas in this case, will include it in their story for the sake of either shock value or because, OMG, this will surely disturb people. This leads into my next and second positive being the overall idea. Now, horror, or at least what scares the shit out of you, is subjective and varies from person to person. But I feel one aspect that can surely disturb anyone is the clever use of sound. It can be something as simple and creepy as background ambience, or as unsettling and distressing as screams or distant cries. And a literal child screaming their head off like a maniac? Yeah, I'm pretty sure that can make even the most desensitized individual feel extremely uneasy. Thirdly, I like that despite following under a similar pattern surrounding gaming and even some lost episode creepypastas, with the protagonist surfing the internet, finding something that turns out to be actually disturbing, it did something that's rather unique, with the whole piracy thing. This may sound off topic, but I'm reminded of the anti-piracy trend from back in 2021, where individuals would contain a pirated copy of a video game such as Mario or even Sonic, and said game out of nowhere will give a warning regarding the player for pirating, and sometimes it contained very creepy and disturbing images. Now, as wild and obviously fake as these were, it's still interesting how this story was almost ahead of its time when taking a similar approach considering this story is rather old, with the source material being pirated and punishing the individual with grotesque imagery, or in this case, creepy and disturbing sounds, which I honestly prefer over bloody-eyed Mario. My final positive is how believable it is. Of course, a story involving a fictional creature is always great and can still be horrifying, but I also live for stories where, even if it did happen, it can possibly happen. Considering many people within the Vocaloid community have pirated Vocaloid at one point, along with there being a chance that sketch websites can contain disturbing material. Like one day, you really want a Gachapoid as your main singer for your own songs, but since you don't have the money, piracy is the answer. only to end up biting you right in the ass because rather than hearing the sweet vocals, you're instead jump scared with sounds straight from hell. I will say, there's only one or two small complaints, and it's the fact that the story got a little cliche around the end with the protagonist trying to fetch the link, only for it to just magically disappear with no trace of it to be found, making it all the more mysterious. From the video description, I can understand that. But her literal search history? I mean, maybe it's possible and I'm just really stupid. But as far as I'm concerned, I don't think it would just disappear like that a day later. But who knows, I guess. Another thing I could comment on is the whole trope behind the protagonist letting morbid curiosity get the better of them, and wanting to put themselves in willing danger and trauma just to see what will happen. But to be fair, if she just ignored it, it would have been the end of the story. And that would have been pretty boring, so I digress. But that aside, I can safely say that this is personally to me one of the best Vocaloid Creepypastas out there. If you want to actually read the story, I will give a link in the description. But what did you guys think of this pasta? Are there any other Vocaloid related creepypastas out there that you think are peak? If so, you can let me know in the comments and maybe I'll do a review of them one day. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace out.